Hello, hello to everyone in Old Women Who Write, everyone who watches, everyone who enjoys interviews with wonderful writers. We have the best with us today. We have Anne Abel. Anne and I are not strangers to each other. I interviewed Anne for her first book, Maddie. I always mix up the two dogs' names, Maddie Marlowe and me.
Milo,
Milo.
Maddie, Milo, and me.
I always
That's
do that.
another book,
Right.
Marley.
And I thought it was a really good book, and I was really interested, but I really did not get how unique Anne is when I was doing that interview. And it's only since then that we've sort of gotten to know a little more about each other. And I follow Anne on TikTok, and she follows me on TikTok. And Anne has burst into the world on TikTok. And this past summer, fall, I was up in New York City and we got to have bagels and coffee together in Anne's beautiful New York apartment. So we're getting to know each other and it's delightful. And this book has blown me away. Anne has written a book called High Hopes. For those of you who are Bruce Springsteen fans, you will recognize the title as one of his song titles. Um, and I have to tell you, when I heard she was writing it, I said, sure, I would love to interview when this book comes out. Yes. And then I got it and it was 400 pages.
You know,
It 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 called on friendship for me to read 400 pages. I mean, I think I'm one of those like uh, uh, on the edge of ADHD, right?
well, it's kind of the
So
opposite of feisty.
yeah, I know. Well, in a way, I'm real feisty, like bam, but don't expect long-term results. Okay, um, but I said, but I'm committed this, and it's Anne. I wouldn't do it for anybody else. Well, I just want to tell you, I read the entire book. It did not disappoint in any sense. It tells such a, it tells a good story. Got a good story base, but it's not about the story. Or it is about the story, but it's not only about the story. It's a lot about the writer. It's a lot about modern or rock and roll music. It's a lot about depression. It's a lot about our connections as human beings and how we give or take from each other with our energy. It's all of those things. So, you know, and I know what it says on the cover of the book or in the promo stuff of the book, which I've read a bunch of times. I'm going to narrow it down even further. It says basically, stripped to the essentials of the description, woman is depressed, woman experiences relief from depression at a concert, woman follows performer and band to another continent and follows them around. Now, if I gave you that description for anyone, what would you think the book was about? Right?
That's not the book.
I
That
know.
is
Okay,
not the
so
book.
Anne, what do you think High Hopes is about?
It's not about I mean, the Bruce Springsteen's in it and he plays a role. It is
Mhm.
not about Bruce Springsteen. It's not about following a rock band per se.
Yeah.
It's about I'm severe, and especially when that took place 12 years ago, I was severely depressed. I mean, I'm someone who had 3 regimens of ECT, electroconvulsive therapy. That's depressed. And then I then at the age of 60, after having one desk too many thrown at me at the community college where I taught for 5 years, I walked out the door and I was never going back, but my kids are grown, my husband travels. I'm not the kind of person who can sit in a family room alone and kind of figure out what's next. I knew I was just going to slide back into the abyss. And I wasn't doing ECT again. The last time had been a disaster. I was terrified. I was really terrified about what was going to happen to me as I'm just driving the 30-minute ride home. And then I had gone to my first concert ever a year earlier, a Bruce Springsteen concert with my son and daughter-in-law when they came to Philadelphia to go see him. I had never been to a concert at the age of 59. I wasn't going to go, and then at the last minute, I pushed myself up off the couch just because I wanted to go with them.
Yeah.
And actually, it turned out this was Labor Day weekend 2012. Um, that summer, I had undergone my third regimen of ECT, but it had to be stopped halfway through because I was losing my memory. And as a result of the memory loss, I didn't remember the July wedding of this son and daughter-in-law who came to visit. So of course, I wanted to be with them. And we get to the stadium, and you know, I knew nothing about Bruce Springsteen really, and they're telling me wedding stories and showing me pictures. And in one picture, Lindsay and Robert are flanked on one side by her parents, on the other side by my husband Andy and me. And Lindsay and Robert, the couple, are beaming. Lindsay's parents are smiling, Andy's smiling. I'm staring directly into the camera, trance like vacant. I'm not smiling, frowning. I'm not there. And
Right.
I standing there in the state, we waited 2 or 3 hours, seeing this picture, I felt a jab in my heart. I felt like a tourist in my own life. And
Yeah.
then suddenly the crowd mysteriously rose in unison, and I rose too. And up on the screen was the face of a man with the biggest, kindest smile I had ever seen. And I felt coming into the stadium, we were going through tailgaters. I'd gone to the stadium a million times for baseball games with my kids. But we're walking through, and the tailgaters are offering us hot off the grill kielbasa's, soft pretzels, even beers. I mean, there was such conviviality. It was nothing like when I'd gone for baseball. So I was already like feeling a little bit I was, by the time got to the stadium, I was dreading we were doing it, but just the people were, they were kind of dancing to not loud music, but there was just such a good spirit. And then we get in, and then I look up, and this man is on the screen, and I just felt my heart open for him and the 40,000 people around me.
Mm,
And then I was swaying and clapping and smiling. Now, remember, I'd never been to a concert. Uh, I knew nothing. And then I knew this man was 60. At 62, he was 3 years older than I was, but this man did not stop. And if he could keep going like this, so could I. So for 3+ hours, Bruce Springsteen's energy, enthusiasm, and humanity lifted me. For 3+ hours, he made me feel like I had a chance. And after two encores, when the stage went dark, I looked down at the empty stage, shaking my head in disbelief that it was possible to feel so good, so happy, so energetic and alive. It was the opposite of anything I had ever felt before. So a year later, when I'm driving home, like panicking about what I'm going to do without the structure and focus of the classroom. And I'd been to a few more of his concerts over the year. And then I remembered how hopeful and alive I felt at his concerts, and that somewhere I'd seen that he was touring Australia in 4 months. And I remember exactly where I was and I thought, getting onto the expressway, I thought, I know, I'll go to Australia in February and follow Bruce Springsteen. Now I have to tell you though, I hate to travel.
yeah.
I hate to be alone. And remember, I hadn't known who this guy was a year earlier, but I literally walked in the door. My little dogs were jumping on me. I didn't take off my coat. I sat down, Googled travel agent Australia, wrote to the first five who popped up. And the next day, one called me, and I booked the trip. Within a week, the trip was booked. But as you know, if you read it, but as soon as the deal was sealed, the voice in my head was like, Anne Abel, you are so pathetic that you have nothing better to do with your life than chasing.
Yeah.
And that haunted me, but I didn't let that, I just ignored the voice. I people don't understand. I wasn't going for fun. First of all, people as depressed as I was, and with my kind of depression, they don't actually. I say I hadn't done the three-letter F word fun until I went to one of Bruce Springsteen's concerts.
Hmm.
But I wasn't thinking, oh, this is going to be fun. I was terrified. I was terrified of being alone. I was terrified of being so far from home. What was I doing? I'm going, I'm 60 years old, and I'm going alone across the world to follow an aging rock star. But I had no choice because I wasn't I wasn't doing ECT again, and I was terrified of I needed structure, and I didn't know what else to do.
At that point, that was probably the most important action you had ever taken on behalf of yourself in your life.
Well, I had committed myself twice to be inpatient in a
Hmm.
psychiatric hospital and three times to do ECT, which, trust me, that takes a lot of courage. I was
Mm, I see.
terrified of doing it, but one of the things about me is that I will do anything, no matter how terrified I am. If I think it's good for me, whether it's a health thing or an opportunity, if I think it's good for me, regardless of how I feel, I will do it and do my
Mm.
best. So, I came home, when I came home from that trip, my best friend came over and she said to me, that was the day after I got home, and she said, "Oh, Anne, I didn't think you'd go. And when you went, I thought you'd turn around and come home." And I just looked at her like, yes, I'm depressed, but I committed myself to a hospital. Like, how can you don't know who I am? And that was it.
Well, there's a couple things. I want to talk about that sort of phase, the when you came home phase, and when you tell the loved ones what's lighting up your life and they don't care, right? I want
Right.
to talk about that. But first, let's talk about Australia. So
Hmm.
you went to Australia and went to 3 or 4 cities, is it?
Five,
Five
five
cities,
cities,
and went
26
to every
days.
one of his concerts.
Hmm.
And that takes up a lot of the book, that the trip itself, but everything, there were so many small things that happened in their conversation with a stranger, an overheard conversation between his band members, um, things that happened that were, I got a visual when I was reading this, that little things in your brain were changing. Little things in your brain were moving into new positions. I don't know how else
Exactly.
to say it.
Well, it's exactly, I mean, they were beginning. And what I say
Yeah,
now is that um, Bruce Springsteen and the people I met in Australia helped me begin to see myself and my
yeah,
place in the world in a new way.
yeah.
And that's what it was. It gives me the chills just saying that. But I'm all alone, but again, people would say, what are you, I got on the plane, the flight attendant says, "Why are you coming to Australia?" At home, people rolled their eyes at me that I was doing this, "Oh, I wish I could just do that." I was embarrassed. And so I told the flight attendant, and her eyes lit up, and she's like, "Oh my goodness, you're so courageous." And later, just to prove that she really meant it, I guess, one of her colleagues came over and said, "I hear what you're doing." And I thought, well, oh, just by saying Bruce Springsteen, you suddenly, but people, and I had a wedding band on it, which it had a clasp, and in the first concert, I broke the clasp from clapping. But I was glad I had the wedding band for that first concert. So people wouldn't think I was just some low, I had no, at least they know one person in the world I was connected to. Like, I was just embarrassed to tell people, but of course people asked me. But little by little, I became more confident because so many people called me courageous. Young people told me over and over, "We can't get my mother off the couch to do one thing or another," things that they had done before they retired. So each time someone said something positive about me, as disbelieving as I was, because that's where my brain was, I
Mhm.
stepped outside myself and tried to see the me these people were seeing. So that was a big part of it. It was a completely different way of looking at myself than the people at home were were giving me.
Yes, yes. Yeah. The I want to talk more about Australia, but I keep thinking about that when you got home. Do you know when 2 occasions when I wrote my book Feisty, and when I got on TikTok and started getting people following me and commenting, I was so excited. This was the most exciting thing, and I'm 83,
Right.
84 years old
Yeah.
when this is happening, and this is amazing. None of the people who I loved really wanted to hear much about it. They don't. And it's there's no meanness, I think. I think people want to hold other people as they knew them. They want to hold them there because that fits into the world that they've constructed.
No.
And
Well,
anybody who does any kind of, I'm not there.
I I think you're more magnanimous than I am. And it might be a little different with me because everybody saw me as a depressed person, and when I was the third time I had ECT, it was outpatient, and colleagues would come over, and even in my catatonic state, I could see them sort of like Oh boy, I thought I was bad, but look how bad. I
Yeah,
could, yeah, even, and I think then all of a sudden I come home and I'm not, look, I'm still depressed. You don't get rid of depression, but I had this for the first time in my life. I had a positive ball of energy the first time, and
yes,
a story about me that I was proud of, a story about me I wanted to tell, and
yeah,
no one wanted to hear it. And it was like, even my husband, who now it's like 47 years, then it was 45 years, he got nervous. Like he is different than those other, he's a very plodding person and, he has his life and it just works for him. And all of a sudden I come home and it's like this gust of wind comes in the house. And
that's exactly what I'm saying. They have a picture of you and how you fit into their lives and they
yeah,
fit into yours.
but your friends should be able to
Yeah,
maneuver.
no,
No.
no, no. How many times have you heard about, for instance, with
Yeah,
somebody
okay.
who is married to or loves someone with an addiction and the
Yeah.
person
Oh, then
gets
they get
clean
better.
and they don't know what their role is anymore. They don't want that person to be the new person they are. So there's that all
Okay.
definitely played a role in your friends
Yeah.
and family. It has to have.
Yeah,
Um,
well, I worked it out with my husband for 2 years. We were at it. I mean, we almost got divorced. I got rid of we left. I left Philadelphia, never went back. But yeah, I don't know. It was really disappointing when I came home.
Sure, sure it is. But you figured it out again. You figured out how to
Yeah.
keep yourself
Well, I was
livable.
determined. I came home, I was determined not to lose this ball of energy. And in that book, I went to a psychiatrist after my best friend came over, then that afternoon. He did the ECT the third time. I really just saw him 15 minutes once a month for meds, but I wasn't and I didn't want to, I was hoping he wouldn't remember that went on the trip because, I can talk a lot if you get me going. It doesn't take much. And I didn't want to go over. And then he did, and he insisted that tell him a story. And then after I told him, and I got energy and I told the story, then he gave me he just hands me this prescription. And he said, Here's a prescription for a sedative." And I just, I'm not really like this, but I just stood up and I said, "Dr. Buddy, I didn't go all the way to Australia to come back to West Philadelphia and be sedated." So that's kind of like was sort of the umbrella of what happened. Like
Gotcha.
I worked hard to get that energy, and I'm not saying it was always there, but I was determined to keep as much of it as I could.
Let's go now back to Australia for a minute. Let's talk about Bruce Springsteen, who I knew nothing about. I still have never been to a Bruce Springsteen concert. I have gone on, I took a page out of Anne Abel's book and researched him on
Google.
YouTube and other places and listened to a lot of his songs, excuse me. And I mean, what I came away with is that he is a very unique human being and a very unique human being performer.
I don't know what kind of musician he is, but he is a master performer and a
Yes,
master of the moment. He knows,
yes,
again, one of my favorite lines is he'll say, "I can't promise you life everlasting, but I can promise you life in this moment." And that's what he does.
yes,
You just, he walks on. I mean, I have a great two of my favorite pages in the book are describing the magic of what once he comes on stage, you are
yes,
just anchored to him. You don't want for anything. You have it all.
yeah,
You have it all when you're there with him. And he doesn't phone it in. Again, I don't know what he's like off stage. All I care about is on stage performer. But for me, his on stage persona was just so validating. I mean, not that he only talked about depression, but there were, those are the things that really resonated with me. And he just is fun. He
yeah,
just is fun.
yeah, yeah. Until your trip, I got the impression that the only thing that gave you temporary relief from the depression was discipline, and particularly discipline in working out.
Exactly.
That you could get the, what do you call them, kicking in?
Endorphins.
Endorphins. I almost said pheromones. Yeah, endorphins
Okay.
kicking in. and that would be a temporary,
Uh-huh.
a relief. Is that's accurate? That's
Yes,
sort of,
absolutely.
and so in Australia, it seems you had the experience of it like piling on and getting more frequent. You were doing both the working out
Right.
and going to the concerts, and you were getting more frequent hits of actual
Yeah,
joy and
but
fun.
it wasn't just, I don't want to sound like I was just doing these dopamine hits.
No, no.
It wasn't like that. I mean, and there were some concerts, I had issues going on with one of my sons. There were days when really, there were a couple of days on that trip where I was really close to just sliding into the abyss. And one of them in particular, there were two, but both to do with the same son. I just didn't feel like going to a concert.
Mhm.
And so I
But
was
you
just
went.
going, I went down to the driver, but then I'm like, okay, of course I brought my ticket, but I always like to be prepared for options. And then I got in the car, and it was a short ride, and I said, well, I'm probably going to leave early. And he said, well, I never heard of anyone leaving. But then you know what happened? His family was into music venues, and we were talking, and because I'm an extrovert, the 15 minutes in the car talking to him kind of lifted my spirits. And then when we got there, I said, you know what? I think I'm going to stay. But that was another important thing. Like, just all these little interactions with people,
Well,
whether it was a
you know,
seatmate or
yeah, I think it's not thinking about like dopamine hits, but they say that for when children are abused, verbally, physically abused over a period of time, it changes their brains.
yes,
And in a way, this is the reverse of that. It isn't that it was an isolated hit. There
right.
was a process going on for Anne
Well,
that was,
also, I want to say when I was 16, my mother made me go to Israel for 2 months and work on a kibbutz, and I didn't want to go, and actually, it was a French kibbutz. I knew some Hebrew. I ended up being, if I had known more at 16, for those 2 months, I was the me that I was meant to be. Like,
Mhm.
people were coming, I had friends, people were coming to me to translate. I was doing things, but the other kibbutzniks were taking. I was just like, I came home with this huge ball of energy. But my mother saw that and she squashed it, and that was the end of it. Well, this trip was kind of like that. Like I
Yeah.
went off, and the me inside, started to kind of come alive a little bit.
Yes. Yes. I get that. I get that. It changed your view of yourself.
A li- I mean, and I want to say a couple other things. I think because the transfer the what that trip was just the beginning of a transformation that's continuing 12 years later. And I've been thinking a lot about it, and I actually come up with four things that I think are important in a transformation, at least in my case. And the first one is connection. The second one is perseverance. The third one
Slow
is,
down, slow down, slow
okay,
down. Say connection.
I'll go back, but
Okay.
connection, perseverance, openness, and hope. And now, in my case, the connection was I needed a lifeline that day and I needed a fast, and I grabbed onto Bruce Springsteen. So
Yes.
that was my connection. Then the voice in my head was saying, you're a loser for doing this, but I persevered. Like I didn't let that stop me. I didn't let anything stop me. I persevered. And then openness and going even back to that first concert I went to. I just went to spend time with my kids. I hate loud music. I hate all that stuff. If once the concert started, I had just crossed my arms and thought, oh no, now I have to just sit here.
Sorry. I turned the sound off on my phone. That's my daughter FaceTiming me. Go ahead.
So if at that first concert, if I had said, "Oh crap, now I can't talk to my kids anymore. I have to listen to this loud
Right.
music." But I was open and I let what was there come into me. So that was the open, so that and also on the trip, like you just be open, like to doing these things I had never done. And then hope, because the hope makes the perseverance a little easier. Like if
Mhm.
you have hope that maybe it's going to be a little bit better, then you're more apt to persevere. Just maybe this will help me. maybe it will help. Not a lot. I'm talking baby steps here, but for me, any forward motion is success. I mean, that's all. So I think those are the four things that help me. And what I've said is, I think the most powerful thing any of us can do, even when we can't see the path to transformation, is to make that first step toward a connection to someone or something, and
Mhm.
then persevere with openness and hope. But just the connection is really important. Like that you're not just all alone, that there's something guiding you or bonding you.
Yes, yes, I agree. Yes, I hear you. I was so worried about you when you were at the point of coming home in the book after Australia. I was so worried about what's going to happen, how is she going to cope. She doesn't have the concerts to go to. She doesn't have the, you know, what's good. I was afraid of other people's reactions. I suspected
You're
what
smarter
they
than I
were going to
was.
be. Um, but I didn't know, and I found the last however many 100 pages, 100 pages, I don't know if it's that long, to be the most meaningful in the book. And a lot of it has to do with your continuing to figure out the formula of what can lift you, from depression for whatever periods of time. And that, I don't know anybody who's done that, Anne, except you. Anyone.
Well, it's not just I don't wake up and it's a daily, hourly
I
thing.
know. I get
Okay.
it. I do get it. I'm not saying, oh, look, she was depressed and now she's not.
Right.
I get
Okay.
huge layers that are in there. But still, the perseverance is very impressive.
I
I
just want to say
don't,
the only non-negative word either parent ever used to describe me was persevering, so it came in handy.
oh my, yeah. Yeah, we didn't even mention, I know some people who don't know you are probably saying something like, well, why was she so depressed?
Mhm.
Well, there's a million possible answers or no answer to that. But it should be mentioned that your childhood was very, you had parents who were,
Well, until they died 5 years ago, they were,
yeah, abusive,
yes.
abusive. Um, and had you come to believe you had nothing to say or be or do. And that is a horrendous thing to happen to anyone. So I want to talk about that after you came home, but I'm worried that we can't get into it. How long have we been talking? I had forgot to check when. I think we've been going about 20 minutes, 25 minutes. Um, let me say, I think what I might want to do, and I want to check with you about it, is I would like to finish up today talking about before you got home or the experience or whatever. I have a couple passages I'd like to read to you from the book because they particularly touched me in some different ways. And maybe schedule a second go
Sure.
where we talk about, because I think they're very important, those what happened when you got home, and what has happened since the book, you know, which
Mhm.
is really important. And I'm sure people would want to know, do you think Bruce has read the book?
Well, you want to hear something crazy?
Yes,
We were invited to in the Kristen Ann Carr Fund that's in that story.
yes.
So I got a few weeks ago, I got an email saying they were having their event November 15th, and would I donate 300 books for them to put in gift bags? So of
Ah,
course I did. And then they invited me to go. So of course Andy and I went, and now it's just around the corner. And then we got there, and someone who had interviewed me on a podcast insisted that I go over and reconnect, as he put it, with Barbara Carr.
mhm.
And
Who is Bruce Springsteen's longtime manager, co-manager?
she was, yeah, I think that not anymore, but
Mhm.
anyhow, and she said this should have been made into a movie. And I'm like, but
Mhm.
anyhow, why did I tell you that? Maybe we should take that out. But
Well, nothing
um,
goes out.
okay. So anyhow, I'm going to be on another radio. I've been on another radio show.
All
They're
right.
anyway.
Oh, good, good. So do we think that, has anybody said, oh, Bruce knows about your
Oh,
book?
no, you know what? Oh, that's
Anything?
what, you know what the
Yeah.
answer to that is? He has helped millions and millions and millions of people. He has helped so many millions of people. I'm just one of millions. So no, 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 no. If he wouldn't doesn't have time for
Okay.
that.
Okay. All right. Let me randomly go. I have so many folded down pages in this book. There. Oh, there was one place that really hit me. You were talking about the drummer from the
Max
band,
Weinberg. Mhm.
yeah, the E Street band, and about you overheard him, I think, or something, use the word satyr to describe.
Because I read up on all these, I researched all these people. I
Yes,
had
of course
read
you did.
that he said the word satyr described his drumming.
Yes, yes. And then, so you looked up the derivation of the word
Well, I
satyr
knew Seder I know
because you're
Hebrew, and I
Jewish.
knew
I
that
know.
meant order, but it also means the Seder dinner. But I
Yeah,
didn't understand it. I didn't understand
right.
what he was talking about until that trip.
Okay, well, this paragraph, you say, it occurred to me that just as Seder makes for good drumming in a band, so too does it make for good dynamics in a functional family. A good family offers steady, reliable support to its members so that they can go off and try things, take risks, figure things out. A good family offers support to its members so they have the courage to live life, always knowing that no matter what happens, even if the worst happens, they are not alone. They can always go home or pick up the phone. And when they do, they know they will hear the steady, reliable thump, thump, thumpity thump of their parents' voices and be comforted. Yes.
Because I was one day when I was feeling really bad and I was in the hotel and my hip was hurting. I didn't feel like going out. So I was listening and I realized what he meant by say order. I was listening to them playing a song and he just was always very steady. And then I realized the song that I knew, it sounded different and everybody was just going, it was like jazz and they were all just going off on their own, doing their own thing. But then toward the end, they could just go back into hook back into the drum beat.
Yes.
Um,
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. Um, there was also one, and I have to look and see why why did I turn the page down here, which I never do to books, but I did.
oh, it's okay. That means you like them.
Mhm. Um, yeah, you're talking about what you called the swells of loneliness that would hit you, not just in Australia, but in your life. And you said these swells of loneliness always took me by surprise, upending my physical and emotional equilibrium. But I was learning that if I did not try to stop it, if I did not argue with it, if I paused and let the feeling fill me, if I paused and acknowledged the loneliness, idling unhurriedly in every crevice and cell of my body, it eventually lost its strength and evaporated. It was just a feeling. If I did not hold on to it, it could not hold on to me. There's no shrink around who could give better advice than that, who could give that better insight than that into what happens when feelings negative
I mean, it was
take
trial and
over.
error again. There I am all alone in these things, there was no one for me to call. So I just was there. And that was part of, I think, the learning or the growth was I learned to depend on myself. I had no one else to depend on.
Yes, yes. But it was you who saw that if you just let the feeling fill and pass by, it will pass by. It's not truth, it's a feeling.
I know, it's crazy.
Yeah, isn't it? Isn't it?
Mhm.
That was been one of my hardest learnings in life, I think. Um, I always assumed my thoughts and my feelings were real.
I know.
Yeah, no. All right. Well, and this may be a good stopping place. Um, and I hope everyone will come back because, as I said, I keep saying 100 pages. It could be 50, it could be 200. I don't know. But the last section of the book, the after the trip whole section of the book about, which is, if you're reading it, you're there and you're saying, what now? You want to know what now? So what happened? Was she able to sustain or grow with, what had occurred? So I hope people will come back and find out because not only is it fascinating, I came away with an incredible admiration for your prodigious brain.
I'll have to
Yes,
go look that up.
yes. Um, you you became a rock and roll expert in how
I
many
did.
months was this?
No, 26 day. Oh yeah, I
Yeah,
knew my way around those concerts by the end.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Um, so yeah, I want to talk about that more. So let's call halt now, if that's okay
Okay.
with you. Before
Mhm.
we do, however, let me hold up. This is High Hopes by Anne Abel. It is available, of course, in all the usual places that you would suspect. Primarily, the Jeff Bezos store. So while we hate making him richer, what can I say? My book's on there too. So anyway, so I hope you will go get High Hopes. You will not be disappointed. It held my interest through 400 pages, and that's not an easy thing to do. So I hope you'll go get it. And Anne, I do hope we'll continue this conversation in a little bit.
Of course.
Meanwhile, I will say goodbye to those who are listening. And I hope you enjoy this episode of Old Women Who Write, and that you'll come back and watch part 2 of Anne Abel's interview.